She ran barefoot through the dark streets of Pompeii, her breath sharp, her arms bleeding from the iron shackles she had pried loose. Somewhere behind her, the house was burning. Whether by accident or design, it no longer mattered. She was free. But in Rome, freedom wasn't a right. It was a threat. And for a woman born in chains, running wasn't escape. It was a crime with only one ending. The Romans had a punishment made just for people like her, and it was worse than death. Born into chains. In the Roman Empire, slavery wasn't rare. It was everywhere. 1 in 3 people in Italy was enslaved. Among them, women lived some of the cruelest lives, not just used for labor, but often for the desires of their masters. They had no rights, no protections, and no escape except through death or running. But running came with a price. Many female slaves were born into slavery. Others were captured during Rome's endless wars. Gauls, Greeks, Jews, Egyptians, once enslaved, they were marked, often branded on the face or arms. The iron symbol, FUG, short for fugitivus, runaway, was pressed into the skin to show the world their crime if caught again. Some tried to hide it. Others wore it until death. The slave catchers. Rome had no patience for escaped slaves. A whole profession existed to hunt them down. Slave catchers, known as fugitivarii, were often brutal ex-slaves themselves, paid in coin and cruelty. They carried whips, ropes, and sometimes iron collars. Once they found you, there were no trials, no arguments, no rescue. A woman could be dragged from a crowd, pulled from behind a market stall, or seized while trying to pass as free. It didn't matter if she had children or a Roman lover or a forged document. Once marked as a fugitive, she was property again, and worse, because now she wasn't just a slave. She was a criminal. Punishment in public. Rome didn't just punish women who ran. It made an example of them. If captured, an escaped female slave could be whipped naked in the forum, while a crowd watched. Others were paraded to the streets in iron collars that read, "I have run away. Catch me and return me to my master." Some collars had bells on them, so the woman couldn't hide. The sound followed her with every step, reminding the world of her shame. Masters could choose their own punishments. Some branded them again, some mutilated them, some sent them to the mines, where few survived more than a year, and some did worse. The domina's wrath. Not all punishers were men. In wealthier Roman households, the mistress of the house, the domina, often ruled over female slaves with deadly control. Many had no pity for escapees. In fact, some took it personally. One story survives from a Roman villa outside Carthage. A Greek woman named Lisa had served in the household for years. She cleaned, cooked, bathed the children, until one day she vanished. Days later, she was found, hiding in a ditch outside the city. She was brought back in chains. The domina had her tied to a post in the courtyard. Then she ordered the slaves to gather, and watched as Lisa was whipped until she passed out. When she woke, her face was branded, and she was forced to serve wine to the guests that same night. This wasn't just punishment. It was humiliation as entertainment. The collared ones. For women who had run once, life was never the same. Some were forced to wear heavy iron collars. Permanently, the collars dug into the skin, caused infections, and left visible scars. Others had their heads shaved, their clothing stripped to rags. Their status lowered even further among the enslaved. A female slave who had tried to escape was seen as dangerous, untrustworthy. She was often isolated, overworked, and more frequently beaten. Worse still, she could no longer be trusted to raise children. Roman law allowed the killing of enslaved children at birth, especially if their mothers were considered rebellious. Some women saw their babies taken, or worse, because of one failed attempt at freedom. Underground networks. Still, Some women didn't stop trying. Secret escape routes existed. Some were helped by freedmen, others by sympathetic servants, and sometimes even by the wives of powerful men. Letters found in Pompeii hint at a woman who helped 3 female slaves escape across the Bay of Naples by boat. She gave them forged documents, disguises, and coins. It's unknown if they made it, but their names were carved into a cave wall near Sorrentum, along with short prayer. Let the gods blind the men who would take us back. But if caught, those who helped slaves escape could also be punished, beaten, fined, even executed. Mercy was dangerous, and escape was never certain. The theater of pain. In some cases, punishment wasn't just brutal. It was turned into theater. Escaped slaves, especially women, were sometimes sentenced to die in the arena, not as gladiators, but as victims. They were dressed in rags or nothing at all, forced to perform scenes of crowd, a slave pleading for freedom, a queen captured in war, a traitor executed. At the end, they were killed by animals by fire or by actors with real blades. These executions were public, loud, and final. The crowd cheered, and the message was clear: no woman escapes Rome. The woman in the pit. There's one story that never left the Roman records. A young Thracian woman named Aulera had escaped from her master's villa near Capua. She made it 30 miles on foot before being caught by a patrolling slave catcher. She was not killed, not right away. Her master ordered something worse. He had a pit dug in the center of his courtyard, shallow but wide. Aulera was stripped, shackled, and placed inside. For a week, she was kept there, rain or sun, day or night. Food was thrown to her. She was made to relieve herself where she lay. Each day, guests came to see the wild slave, as her master called her. They laughed. Some spat. Others stared in silence. After 7 days, she was dragged out, cleaned, and forced back into service. She lived another year. Then she disappeared from the records. Her name remains, but her end does not. Sold to the mines. For some female escapees, the worst fate was not execution, but the mines. The Roman mines, especially in Spain and Egypt, were known as places of slow death. Though most slaves sent there were men, women were not spared. In the mines, they carried heavy baskets of ore, worked in tunnels barely tall enough to crawl, and inhaled toxic dust that burned the lungs. Food was scarce, water filthy. There were no breaks, no medicine, no hope. Women in the mines rarely survived more than a year. One Roman writer described it simply: they send ghosts to the mines, not people. To be sent, there was a sentence of silence. And yet Rome believed this was justice, for the crime of running. Mothers in chains. Escaped female slaves who were pregnant faced a double punishment. If caught, their children were often taken at birth and sold to different households, or killed to prevent future rebellions. Mothers were beaten during labor. Some were forced to breastfeed the children of their masters while theirs starved. A document from the time of Emperor Domitian tells of a woman named Issa who was captured with her newborn still suckling. Her master chained her ankle to a kitchen wall, allowed her to keep the child for 3 days, then took the baby away. Issa was never seen again. Rome didn't care for a slave's tears. A woman's sorrow was just another part of ownership. The law of the cross. In the harshest cases, runaway slaves, male or female, were crucified, but women weren't usually nailed to crosses. Instead, they were tied, sometimes upside down, sometimes left under the sun for days, as birds picked at their skin. One record from Palestine describes a female slave crucified outside the gates of Caesarea. She had run twice. Her master chose a cross. Her name was Tyria. She was 17. They tied her arms and legs, smeared her with honey, and left her to die in the heat. Locals were told, this is what happens to those who run. The silent ones. Not all stories were written down. Most weren't. The voices of enslaved women didn't survive in books or scrolls. But archaeology leaves its own testimony. In the ruins of a Roman estate in southern Gaul, a stone tablet was found. It was carved with 3 short words, written in Vulgar Latin. I ran once. No name, no date, just a scratch in stone, hidden behind a collapsed wall. Whoever wrote it may have been caught or killed, or simply lived in silence afterward. But they left a mark, a whisper from a time when speaking meant death. Between mercy and pain, not every master chose brutality. Some granted mercy. A few even freed women who ran, moved by their desperation. But these cases were rare and often recorded only because they were unusual. More often, forgiveness came too late. The law allowed the master full rights to punish, imprison, or kill as he wished. Appeals were ignored. Sympathy was weakness. And women, especially those who dared to run, were never seen as human in the eyes of the system. They were property, and broken property was disposable. Echoes of chains. What does it mean to own someone? What does it take to strip a person of voice, will, and hope, and punish them for trying to reclaim it? In ancient Rome, slavery wasn't hidden. It was public, praised, and protected. And those who tried to escape were turned into warnings for the rest. Women bore the worst of it, not just as laborers, but as objects of pleasure, punishment, and control. Their stories weren't told to honor them. They were told to scare others. But today, we remember them for a different reason. We remember because they tried to run, because they carved a message into stone, because they whispered prayers before the fire, because even when the price was brutal, they chose to fight. This is the story Rome didn't want you to remember, but now you do.